When you're looking for the dead, it's polite to let their spirits know you're coming.
Whenever you come into these areas where people have died or you've got memorials to people, it's the custom that we put flowers or incense down just as the first thing we do to sort of say to the spirits that we're here, the spirits of those people that are gone, that we're here and we're paying respects to them. Sometimes people have information. Some individuals.
Walter Pearson is a Vietnam combat veteran and a former army interpreter who now lives here in a small village. He's grown used to seeing Vietnamese friends searching for the remains of loved ones killed in the war. Nguyen Bak Dung's brother died fighting Australian troops here 43 years ago. A handful of comrades is still checking the surrounding fields to find where he was buried.
Vâng, nhớ cho nên là chúng tôi đi tìm từ năm 1975 đến nay nhưng mà không có tin tức. Thì bây giờ mới được tin tức.
Australia entered the Vietnam War 50 years ago. For a decade, they fought alongside South Vietnamese to stop a takeover by the Communist North. Some 500 Australians were killed and perhaps 2 million Vietnamese. A whole generation has grown up since the North won the war in 1975. But there's hardly a family here that didn't lose someone or hasn't searched for their grave. Australia went to great lengths to find the remains of 6 soldiers who went missing in action in the Vietnam War. But among the Vietnamese they were fighting, some 300,000 soldiers are still missing. It is intensely painful for the families, even after all these years. Because in Vietnamese tradition, the souls of the dead will not have peace until they're found.
From their point of view, their cultural instinct is, and their desire is to have the remains brought back home. They feel that then they can do the usual rituals every year and so on around the grave, and they feel that the person will be at rest.
Walter Pearson understands that instinct better than anyone. He was part of the project to find the 6 missing Australian servicemen. It took 5 years of planning, fundraising and digging until the last grave was found in 2007.
I didn't know anything much about it. I actually worked on the file when I was here in 1972. But when I was approached by Operation Aussie's Home and Jim Burke, I suddenly realised that there were families out there who were yet to sort of have some resolution over this issue. Every one of the families that we dealt with had a problem, but it had huge impact on all those families. And bringing the remains home had real resolution for everyone.
But there's little resolution here. At mass meetings like this, families register the names of lost relatives and swap information on recent searches. It is a sad but business-like quest, undiminished by passing decades. The main problem is there are almost no official records of where their relatives were killed.
Bằng tổ quốc ghi công chỉ mang tính chất là thờ cúng trong gia đình và để mọi người biết là gia đình nhà mình là gia đình liệt sĩ. Còn cái việc đi tìm liệt sĩ bắt buộc phải có tờ giấy báo tử.
Vietnam helped Australia find its 6 missing soldiers, known as MIAs. Australia has done little to help Vietnam in return, until now.
In memory of the fallen, lest we forget.
In the Australian War Memorial in Canberra, another group of veterans is searching for the dead.
Yeah, the research is going well.
Derrill
tracking
Heer
down
served
all the
2
places
tours
where
in
we
Vietnam.
buried the bodies.
Today he's
It's the
combing
records.
through the records of every firefight Australians were
Yeah,
involved
it's in
in.
this AWM 103 series. Bob's got the intelligence summaries for November, December 67 that we've been looking for.
A fellow veteran, Dr. Bob Hall, started the project 7 years ago to assess how effective the Australian task force had been.
So, and we've got a grid reference for him by the Kiwis, W6.
But the research has also shown where nearly 4,000 enemy soldiers fell.
Yeah.
After the 6 Australian MIAs were found, Derrill and Bob realised they could help the Vietnamese find their missing soldiers.
The key to this study really is those contact reports. You know, we, as a platoon commander, when you were in the bars of that doe, I was out in the bush filling out these reports, and there are a couple of mine in there somewhere. But you know, every time you had a contact, you had to fill out these reports, and we used to think they were useless at the time. But now they're a record of every battle we fought, and they show the date, time, place, number of enemy who were killed, and that information gives us every approximate burial site. And the contact that
They've called the project Operation Wandering Souls, and they've been sharing the information with Vietnamese families and veterans still searching for peace. Derrill Heer is about to make his final trip to Vietnam.
I think this has been a great experience in the end of my life.
Yeah, you only get a couple of chances in your life to make a real difference, and this is one of them.
This is how it all began. This is the day you enlisted.
17 years old.
Goodness, what a handsome young boy you were. The project has struck a deep chord with one veteran who until now refused to have anything to do with Vietnam. Lawrence Wildeboer was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder decades after he served as a mechanic in the war.
The photo was taken because it was the first time that a bridge layer had laid a bridge in Vietnam.
He keeps a low profile with his second wife Ronnie in country Victoria, never goes to the local RSL and never marches on Anzac Day.
There was one particular incident where a Vietnamese interpreter was interrogating a peasant that we'd come across on the farm who'd been wounded. The interpreter wasn't getting the answers that he wanted, so he shot him. And I was surrounded by my work people who were all believers in the Geneva Convention, and nobody did anything. And at the time I was able to dismiss that as, you know, the boys club, yeah, he deserved that. But later on I realised that was just a no-no. And the realisation that we were killing people who were just farmers, peasants, people just wanting to live out their lives, raise their children, but not interested whether it was communist or whatever. That was somebody else's fight.
Lawrence vowed he would never go back to Vietnam. There were too many bad memories. But after hearing of Derrill Heer's project, he's decided to return with him to the wartime capital, Saigon. He can't show any families where their loved ones are buried, but he has something just as valuable to give.
Towards the end of my service in March '69, roughly, I was out with a squadron of tanks. The infantry had brought in some documents, as well as weapons that had got out of a bunker system. I picked up the documents, flicked through it and noticed that it was beautifully written poetry, beautifully illustrated, and there's a scarf. So I picked up 2 documents. There was a name on the front of one of them, and I decided I wanted to hang on to these. I'm not sure if my intentions were clear at the time, but later on I thought I'd like to get these back to the family, but communications being what it was, there was no internet or anything, so there was no way, but I hung on to them for 43 years.
The poetry book, later translated, continued to haunt him.
It was another thing, another chink in the armour that showed me we weren't fighting people who weren't human, because it was so beautifully illustrated and beautifully written.
Lawrence sent the notebooks to Canberra to see if the Wandering Soul team could find who wrote them. Derrill's contacts in Vietnam couldn't identify the poet, but they did find the identity of the second notebook's author, a soldier whose family still lives outside Saigon, now renamed Ho Chi Minh City. And now Lawrence has come back to keep his promise.
Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. I wouldn't have recognised you. I would have walked right past you, mate.
I've shaved my beard off.
Why?
Made me better looking.
Tomorrow they'll be meeting the soldier's mother to return his belongings.
You know, I've often heard guys say that you should come back here just to cleanse the soul or cleanse the spirit, and it's amazing. It's not until you go through it yourself and you realise how beneficial it is to return and have a look at the place and meet the people who show no signs of any ill will or resentment.
They're very forgiving, aren't they?
Yeah,
The
amazing.
Vietnamese.
Yes, yeah.
Xin chào.
The story of the notebook has provoked a storm of interest in Vietnam. Derrill has had to hire a bus to accommodate the hordes of local media wanting to see it returned.
This one has a personal particulars form and tells the history of this soldier. And this is what Lawrence found, the 2 books, plus this scarf which has been carefully kept in the notebook. So we're taking it back to the mother, which we found the mother through Colonel Tien, who has worked in this field trying to return artefacts to families.
You think about keeping this all together for 43 years, in hindsight.
Yeah.
My God. I must have moved 10 times in all that time. I don't think I've got anything else left from all that, except this. When I say I've hung on to this for 43 years, even my first wife didn't stay that long.
We can see. And what are you hoping to do today, apart from give back the belongings, the tangible link to her son? Is anything else in your mind?
For me personally, and I'm not sure if I can describe it, relieve the frustration, the anger that I felt as a result of Vietnam, and set some ghosts free. I'm going to make a connection with this woman. Yeah.
In Australia, the pain of war has been a private burden for veterans and their families, little understood by the rest of the community. But in Vietnam, it's a shared experience, the suffering affecting everyone. It's a somewhat awkward arrival, surrounded by cameras and looking for the mother of the dead soldier.
Ba ngồi đi. Tìm ra một số những cái kỷ vật rất là đặc biệt.
But soon the onlookers are forgotten.
So he always had this wish to try and find family.
Và đã bao nhiêu lâu rồi ông ấy luôn luôn có một cái mong ước là được đưa những cái vật đấy để tìm lại cái gia đình mà có những người con giữ đấy. Ông sắp khóc rồi bà.
And we were both soldiers.
Và cả hai người ấy đều rất muốn như thế ạ.
And here's Lawrence. Open the book up and show
Chính
it.
ông
Show
Lawrence sẽ trao lại cho bà.
And this first page, open up to that page. Your son's writing.
Đây là cái chữ viết của con trai bà.
This scarf was found inside this book.
Ông ấy
Nguyen T. Hugh is 85 and never learned to read or write. But she tells them she understands the notebook's importance as the last record of her son, Phan Van Bun.
For several days now, her children has logged onto the internet, read the articles and copied it, and have seen this and have brought it to her, and she known about it.
Beautiful.
Okay. So give her the scarf. This is the scarf.
Đây là cái khăn
Was in the book.
mà nó đi kèm với cái quyển sổ này bà.
Belonged to her son.
Của con trai bà đấy ạ.
Could you just say to her that I've been waiting for 43 years to return this to her?
Ông Lawrence đã chờ đợi 43 năm nay để có được cái giờ phút này để trả lại cái kỷ vật cho bà.
Beautiful. You're a lovely, lovely woman.
Bà là một người phụ nữ tuyệt vời ạ.
And I'm sorry you lost two sons in the war.
Mrs. Nguyen laments they were never able to find her son's remains.
And when she look at this, and then she can see that Smith, his son.
Yes.
They were very good soldiers.
Và ông nói họ là những người lính rất là tuyệt vời ạ.
And well respected by Australians.
The notebook and the kangaroo are given pride of place on the family shrine. Within moments, Lawrence feels a weight he's carried most of his life has been lifted.
It's going to take a little while for it to sink in, but the moment it's here, you know. And meeting the mother was just a most amazing emotional experience for me. Yes.
Ronnie, you seem to be losing it more than Lawrence is.
Well, I know how important it's been to him.
Yes.
And it's all culminated today.
Yes,
I'm
wonderful.
so proud of him. I'm so proud of my husband.
With the notebook returned, Derrill heads off on his mission, meeting veterans groups to pass on the combat records from Canberra. Walter Pearson, the veteran who now lives in Vietnam, helps out as his interpreter. Today it's senior officers from their old nemesis, North Vietnam's 33 Regiment.
This is the martyrs of some we have identified by name.
Australians killed more than 100 of their soldiers at the Battle of Bin Ba. Walter was in the heart of the fight. These days he's firm friends with a 33 veteran, Vo Xuan Tu. There's an obvious respect between these old soldiers.
He said to me last night, look, I've fought at 5 different nations, he said, and the Australians were by far and away the hardest.
What do you think about Derrill's project?
Có ý kiến gì về dự án của anh Derrill?
Rất là tốt, anh giúp cho chúng tôi có những cái thông tin về
It's very good. It'll help us gather more information about the people that we're looking for.
For the 33 Regiment, Bin Ba was one of hundreds of battles as they moved through the bush, living off the land. In the chaos of guerrilla warfare, they had little time to keep records of the dead. A regiment memorial near Bin Ba lists 2,100 killed in the war out of an estimated 4,000.
So what you've got is you've got the name of the soldier, you've got his date of birth, where he came from, the unit he served in, when he had joined the army and when he died. So with this one, we don't know what his family name was. We don't even know what unit he belonged to. We do know that he joined the army in 1965 and he was killed in 1969.
And you know where they're buried?
Anh biết mộ của các liệt sĩ này ở đâu không?
Giờ không thể biết, có một số bây giờ chưa tìm thấy được.
Yeah. No, we don't know where the majority of them are. We do know where some are, but we don't know where the majority are.
So this is their missing in action.
In part, yes.
In part.
Chỉ khoảng 20% trong cái số này chỉ có thể hài cốt.
About 20% of them, we know where they're, we recovered their remains.
That's
but,
all?
Yeah, 80% of them are missing.
Walter has only disdain for Australia's involvement in the war. He was seriously wounded and, like Lawrence, has suffered decades of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Well, my personal view is it was a waste of time, money, effort and resources. I mean, we shouldn't have been here. And if we had understood what the Vietnamese were on about, which was basically reuniting their country and making it free and independent, well, we shouldn't have been here.
Derrill doesn't share his dark view. As a professional soldier, he says he did his job well and left politics to the politicians. What they agree on is that old enmities should be forgotten.
Soldiers get on with soldiers. We have a particular sense of humour. We will drink beer together, eat noodles together. And I think that there are some very disgruntled people at home in Australia. I think that this is really a peaceful thing. And after all, the Australian government has now recognised the Vietnamese government for the last 39 years. And it's time for some people to move on.
Sadly, it's already too late to recover most of the soldiers' remains. Too many years have passed, too much land has been developed, and too many bones have just dissolved in the acidic soil. But simply finding the location can bring peace. Nguyen Bak Dung now knows his brother from 33 Regiment was buried in this field after dying in the Battle of Bin Ba.
And there was no remains left because there'd been some excavation there. And he carried out ceremonies, and the ceremonies will actually allow him to take the spirits back to Ho Chi Minh City. So he's been able to take home the wandering soul.
Back in the south, Derrill and Lawrence make one last visit to Mrs. Nguyen's home. The family has prepared a banquet and an invitation.
Ông bây giờ là ông bằng tuổi con tôi. Giờ ông là ông bằng lòng làm con tôi không?
So now I want to adopt you, become my son. Do you agree or not?
Oh, very proud, yes. Oh, thank you. Beautiful.
It's a new friendship that will bring many obligations, but Lawrence is happy to accept it. For him at least, a war he fought 43 years ago is finally over.
Extended family. I hope I blend in all right. Yeah, you do.